The new residents of Jerusalem. Now the leaders of the people settled in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots to bring one out of every 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while the remaining 9 were to stay in their own towns. The people commended all the men who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. These are the provincial leaders who settled in Jerusalem. Now, some Israelites, priests, Levites, temple servants, and descendants of Solomon's servants lived in the towns of Judah, each on his own property in the various towns, while other people from both Judah and Benjamin lived in Jerusalem. And so there's going to get ready to be a whole bunch of names again. If you do know how to pronounce them, say them with us. If you know how to type them out in the comment section, please do so, and I thank you. Just a quick refresher. So we're in the book of Nehemiah. We already read the book of Ezra. This is now the book of Nehemiah. Both Ezra and Nehemiah were close to the same time. I believe Ezra went back to Jerusalem first, and then Nehemiah came at a later time, a little bit later time, but very close. So they saw each other, talked to each other, and as we can see, Ezra was a priest, and Ezra even spoke in our previous Bible study. So if you missed it, go back to the previous Bible study. So, but this is the return from the exile. So Israel has come a long way. They were in Egypt. They went to Egypt because there was getting ready to be a famine that they didn't know until it was revealed to Joseph, right? And then they were in Egypt, and they grew. They were blessed and they grew, but the Egyptians, especially Pharaoh, was jealous, wanted to use them, wanted to misuse them. And so they ended up becoming slaves to the point where they cried out to the Lord, and the Lord brought Moses along to lead his people out of Egypt, and that's what happened. And they were led to the promised land. However, a whole group of people, they weren't fully committed and they weren't fully faithful for that first generation. So they weren't able to get into the promised land. And so their sons and daughters, the second generation, though, was able to go into the promised land and start help conquering the lands, while the Lord did most of the work for them of conquering. And so they lived in the land of the Canaanites, and they were blessed. Everything that they did was blessed. And with that blessing, they slowly started not praising the Lord, not giving gratitude to the Lord, not humbling themselves, not thanking the Lord for everything that he's blessed them and protected them. And so slowly but surely, they started worshiping and doing things that the Canaanites had done, the detestable practices that the previous peoples of the lands had done, and they did it just as much, even more so. And so the Lord sent prophet after these people to guide them back to worshiping the Lord. And sometimes it worked, and then other times it was like a repetition to the point where they stopped listening completely to the prophets and to the seers and the people that the Lord was sending. So part of the whole thing before even getting into the promised land was the covenant, and the covenant was to continue to worship the Lord, and if not, there would be consequences. And so half the people of Israel went onto one mount and said the blessings, and then the other half went to the other mount and said the cursings, saying that if they stopped worshiping the Lord, they stopped following the laws and the commands, that they would be exiled. That punishment would happen and they would end up exiled. And that's what happened. They were exiled. They were taken to Babylon in Syria, and they were there for a while. And we're going to read in the next book in Esther that has something to do with part of the exile time. But so we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit in time. But that's how the Bible plays a little bit in the especially in the Old Testament. But we see that there was always hope. There was always hope. And so another thing about the Slant Bible Study is we bring past to present, and what we read and what we learn, and we see how it affects us in our lives, and see what ways it can happen or whatever it may be, and see if it still reigns true, see if things still work the same or are very similar. And in all cases, pretty much to this day. So, but so now they're coming back. You know, the Lord had softened the king's hearts, that all the king's hearts, that they had not abused the the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, and so they were able to go back. They were able to go back after a certain period of, I believe it was 40, at least 40 years, or please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but over a certain time period, and then they were able to go back, and that's where we're at now. They went back, they started rebuilding. In fact, Ezra had went back specifically earlier, after the time of exile was complete. He was one of the first ones to go back and start building, but then there were people that were against them, you know, people of the land, people that believe in the Lord, you know, etc., that were against them. And so Nehemiah came with authority. He came with the king's blessing and the ability to get things to help rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild the temple, and so of the temple of the Lord. And so that started happening again. And both Ezra and Nehemiah were able to help through the Lord, with the Lord's help, encourage the people and show that the Lord was protecting them and guiding them, and the hope. Because at first, because they realized, once they found the book of the law, I know this is a lot, right? I'm trying to get us all caught up. But once they realized that they had not been following the laws and the commands and decrees, because this is generations further down the line, you know, from the exile, that they were upset. You know, here was Israel, this great and mighty nation, with their own king, and they were able to worship the Lord, and now they are subjects, and they're subjects still. However, they're blessed because they're not persecuted. They're being able to rebuild the land and rebuild Jerusalem. And so right now, that's where we're at currently. And so again, bringing past to present, the new residents of Jerusalem, and how they are coming back to the promise. Think about that in our lives. Sometimes we get led astray. Witness, right? A person right here been led astray, and the Lord knows us, knows our hearts, and He provides opportunities. He speaks to us. He tells us, hey, you know, going down the wrong path. And we are able to be forgiven, ask for forgiveness and be given, and come back into a fellowship with the Lord and into the way. And so, again, bringing past to present, are there times in your life where you felt, or you made decisions, or you saw somebody make a decision and they started going down the wrong path? Were you that opportunity? Were you that person to help to turn them around? Or was somebody there to help turn you around? Or was there something that you thought of that helped turn you around from whatever it may have been that was detrimental to your life, to what your goals are? So think about that. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think?